My mom's killer sent me a letter with our secret nickname, and I fell for it. The envelope in my mailbox had no return address, just my name, scrawled in a familiar, elegant cursive that made the world tilt on its axis. 8 years of silence, of police reports and crackpot theories, of seeing her face on faded posters stapled to telephone poles. And then this. My hand trembled as I tore it open. My 20th birthday. I was supposed to be nursing a hangover in my dorm, not deciphering a message from the dead. The note inside was short. Happy birthday, Carrot. I'm still waiting for you at the same place. Come here tomorrow at dawn and look for my blue coat. Signed, Mom. The paper felt cold, but not as cold as the blood that drained from my face. My breath hitched. Since she vanished, my father and I had waded through a sewer of hoaxes. Letters from supposed psychics, ransom notes from junkies, even a deranged email claiming she'd been abducted by aliens. We learned to discard them, to build a wall around that wound. But this one was different. This one had a key. Carrot. A stupid, secret nickname. I was 7, and she'd bribed me with a trip to the arcade if I finished my vegetables. I'd powered through a whole plate of raw carrots, my cheeks bulging like a chipmunk's, until she'd laughed so hard she cried. From that day on, whenever she wanted to make me smile, I was her little carrot. Nobody else knew. Not my dad, not my friends, not a single other soul on this planet. And suddenly, after 8 years of gnawing uncertainty, a sliver of impossible hope pierced through the darkness. The trail was our Sunday ritual. 2 miles of packed earth winding through whispering pines, ending at a placid, fish-filled pond. It was the one place the noise of the world couldn't reach us. The day she disappeared, my dad was laid up with the flu. It was just her and me. I remember the smell of pine sap and damp soil, the bright cerulean blue of her windbreaker against the deep green of the forest. I remember the sound of her laughter as I tripped over a root. Halfway to the pond, I had to pee. Go on behind that big oak, she'd said, smiling. I'll be right here. She was maybe 30 feet away when I stepped behind the tree. The forest was quiet, peaceful. The only sound that broke the stillness was the sharp crack of a heavy branch snapping somewhere nearby. I thought nothing of it. A deer, maybe. I finished, zipped up, and turned around. Okay, I'm done, I called out. Silence. The path was empty. The spot where she had been standing was just a spot, a patch of dirt and leaves. Mom? I waited. A minute stretched into 5. The peaceful quiet of the woods began to feel menacing, watchful. I ran to the pond, thinking she'd walked ahead. The few fishermen there just shook their heads. I sprinted all the way back to the parking lot. Her car was still there, locked, her purse on the passenger seat. She had vanished as if the earth had just opened up and swallowed her whole. The search was a blur of police sirens, barking dogs, and the grim faces of volunteers. They combed every inch of that forest. They were looking for that blue coat, a beacon of color that should have been impossible to miss. They found nothing. Not a footprint, not a torn piece of fabric, not a torn piece of fabric, not a single drop of blood. The news called me the boy who lost his mother. It felt like a cruel joke. The story spawned a cottage industry of morbid curiosity, TV specials, true crime podcasts, forums filled with armchair detectives. The theories were endless. She was having an affair with a man from her office, a notorious sleaze who'd conveniently moved across the country a week later. She was another victim of the pickaxe maniac, a local boogeyman who'd bludgeoned 3 other women in the region years earlier. His signature was leaving the weapon embedded in the earth near the body. They never caught him. The police even looked at my dad. The life insurance policy was substantial. But without a body, without any evidence, every lead dried up. Her case went cold, buried under the weight of fresher tragedies. Until now. My first call was to my father. We hadn't spoken in months, not since a screaming match over my tuition that ended with me hanging up on him. I read him the letter. I expected excitement, questions, something. Instead, there was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. Dad? It's a prank, Hale, he finally said, his voice strained, thin. Some sick person found one of your old photo albums. It's a disgusting, cruel prank. No, I insisted, my own voice rising. Dad, she said, Carrot. You don't remember that, do you? You were never there. It was just our thing. Listen to me, he pleaded, and a raw desperation entered his tone that I'd never heard before. It was unnerving. Burn it. Burn the letter and call the police. Tell them what it said, but for the love of God, do not go to that trail. Why? I shot back. Why are you so against this? It's the first real thing we've gotten in 8 years. Because it's a trap, he almost yelled. Because your mother is gone. And I'm not losing you too. His panic felt wrong. It wasn't just protective, it was frantic, almost guilty. It made my skin crawl. The old anger flared up, hot and familiar. I'm going, I said, my voice cold. I have to. I hung up before he could say another word. Even if it was a trap, even if it was the cruelest joke in the world, I had to know. That single word had rekindled the flicker of hope I thought had been extinguished forever, and I would have walked through fire to see if it was real. The all-night drive was a surreal haze of caffeine and spiraling thoughts. I arrived at the trailhead as the first hints of gray light were bleeding through the canopy. The air was cold and bit at my exposed skin. There was only one other vehicle in the gravel lot, an old beat-up pickup truck with a couple of fishing rods and a rusty tackle box thrown in the bed. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stepped onto the path. Every tree seemed to hold a memory. Every rustle of leaves sounded like a footstep. The forest felt different now. It wasn't the sanctuary of my childhood, it was a tomb. I walked until I reached the spot, the big oak tree where I'd stepped off the path. Standing there again felt like violating a grave. The air grew thick, heavy. I stared at the tree's gnarled bark, half expecting to see her step out from behind it, smiling, asking what took me so long. Then I heard it. Crack. The sound was identical. A heavy branch, snapping under weight. Exactly as I remembered from that day. I spun around, my blood running cold. The trail behind me was empty, just shadows and the gentle sway of ferns. It was the wind. It had to be the wind. My eyes scanned the dense woods, and that's when I saw it. A tiny fleck of impossible color deep within the trees. A patch of brilliant cerulean blue. Hope, fierce and blinding, surged through me. I plunged off the path, shoving through branches that clawed at my face and clothes. And there it was. Her blue windbreaker wrapped tightly around the trunk of a thin birch tree, like a strange, vibrant fungus. I reached out a trembling hand and touched the fabric. It was real. I could feel the familiar synthetic texture under my fingertips. Tears I didn't know I was holding back streamed down my face, hot against my cold skin. She was here. She was close. Tucked into a fold of the jacket, almost hidden, was another envelope. Same paper, same handwriting. My fingers fumbled as I tore it open. Glad you came, Carrot. I'm right beneath you. My gaze fell from the note to the ground at the base of the tree. The earth was disturbed. A patch of dark, rich soil, maybe 3 feet wide, looked freshly turned over in a sea of dead leaves and forest-floor debris. My hands shook, but I dropped to my knees. I didn't care what it meant. The truth was buried here, and I needed it. I clawed at the dirt, scooping it away with frantic energy. My fingernails scraped against rocks and roots, but I didn't feel it. Then my fingers hit something hard and unyielding. Wood. With a final, desperate heave, I pulled a small, crudely made wooden box from the shallow grave. It was about the size of a shoebox, and it was latched shut. I didn't hesitate. I tore at the rusty clasp until it broke away in my hand, and I threw the lid open. The hope inside me died, a screaming, violent death. There were 2 objects nestled in the dirt inside. One was a human skull, yellowed with age. A massive, spiderweb fracture bloomed across the forehead, a testament to a single, brutal impact. The other was the head of an old, rusted pickaxe. The metal was pitted and dark, but I could still see the deep, maroon stain that had soaked into it long ago. A strangled noise escaped my throat. The pickaxe maniac. It was real. It was all real. And then I heard it again. The same sound. Crack. But this time it was closer. Right behind me. I whipped around, my body seized by a terror so absolute it felt like ice water flooding my veins. I could hear them now. Deliberate, crunching footsteps approaching through the undergrowth. He hadn't just left a message. He'd come back to watch. He was here to finish the job. Another snap, closer still. My eyes darted wildly between the trees, trying to catch a glimpse of the monster coming for me. Then a shape resolved itself from the shadows. A tall figure in dark clothing, his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. He took another step forward, and behind him 3 other figures emerged from the trees. They were wearing uniforms, my father had called them. After I'd hung up, he'd called every cop he knew in our old hometown and, choking back tears, begged them to find me on that trail before someone else did. His frantic desperation hadn't been guilt. It had been pure, unadulterated fear. He had saved my life. They told me later that the pickup truck in the lot was his. When they searched it, they found a forensic nightmare. Hair samples from at least 5 different women, scraps of skin under the floor mats, a cooler in the back with a severed human finger on ice, and in the glove compartment, a stack of envelopes and a notepad. Dozens of drafted letters, all written in a chillingly perfect imitation of my mother's cursive. He'd been planning this for a long time. For some twisted, unknowable reason, his obsession with my mother had transferred to me. He wanted to finish the story he'd started 8 years ago. He was gone, though. The moment he'd seen the police lights filtering through the trees, he must have bolted, melting back into the wilderness he knew so well. There was one small mercy in all this horror. Guided by the freshly disturbed earth, the police searched the area around the tree. A few yards away, they found another, older box, buried much deeper. It contained the rest of my mother's remains. We could finally bring her home. We could finally give her a funeral. But nothing feels over. The hole in my life is now a crater. We buried my mother, but her killer still walks free. And as I lie awake at night, staring into the darkness, one question claws at my mind. Over and over, a question the police have no answer for. A question that terrifies me more than any man with a pickaxe. He had her journals. He studied her handwriting, her life. I understand that. But he couldn't have known everything. He couldn't have known about that day at the dinner table, a private joke shared between a mother and her 7-year-old son. So how in God's name did he know to call me Carrot?